Today we are going to talk about data-driven content strategy and usability. We are Srijan and we are a global Drupal engineering and digital services company which focuses on delivering personalized customer experiences through rich content, marketing technologies and machine learning. We have offices across the globe. We have a forte in Drupal, but we delve in a lot of technologies as well. I am Shashank. I have been working with Srijan for the last 12 years as a business analyst. I have expertise in product solutioning, and I'm also a user experience analyst in a couple of accounts here. I can be reached on Drupal.org with my ID Shash.
Hi everyone, I'm Nidhi Bhardwaj. I'm also a business analyst with Srujan Technologies. I have a 10 plus years of experience in brand building, brand creation, and I worked across domains like beauty and retail, logistics, healthcare. I can be reached on my ID Nidhi B on Drupal.org. And together today, Shashank and I will take you through how data-backed, data-driven content strategy approach improvises the usability and user experience. Before we delve deeper into what is user experience, let's understand what is usability. Usability can be described as a system's capacity to provide for conditions which allows the user to meet their needs and their goals, engage with the application, and complete their intended task efficiently, safely, and effectively while enjoying the experience. In today's time, when the user is more tech aware, is using different devices to access content, usability is not just about the need of a content or an application. Usability is a critical factor to provide a better user experience and is a major contributor to a pleasant and engaging user experience. Having talked about user experience, let's understand what is the difference between usability and user experience. ISO defines user experience as a sum total of all aspects of the user's experience while they interact with a product, service, environment, or facility. Translating it, user experience is what a brand experience is, what a brand talks to a customer over different mediums, over different channels, online and offline and in store. It's a sum total of a brand's communication, experience, to a user, and needless to say that a user experience needs to be consistent across the channels, across the platforms for the users to be able to relate better with the brand. Now coming to usability, we already know what a usability is. Now let's understand that usability is a subset of user experience. A user experience starts with the utility of a product or a service where our product or service meets the need of the customer. When the functionality meets the form here, people should be able to use the platform, the application intuitively. That's where the usability comes in picture. The way it looks and the way it feels is, and if it is pleasing for the customer, then it becomes a desirable application. And a sum total of this gets together to create a brand experience where a user does not just get what service or product he or she requires to be able to perform a specific task in a given condition, but also is pleased and happy and feels that the brand has flawlessly transitioned from meeting my need to addressing what I want by adding different dimensions and would want to reconnect and re-engage with the brand. Why do I now need a content planning? Having discussed about usability, having discussed about user experience, what role does content planning and content planning strategy play? Now let us understand the fundamental that a brand connects with the user or an end user by the way of content. Content is the language for the brand. Definitely, I would need to plan the content across the platforms, mediums, and channels so that I engage with my end user and I'm able to talk a single language. Why does an organization need content planning strategy? As an organization, I have a lot of data. I interact with a lot of data. I understand I get a user data, user behavior data, user preference data. Naturally, if I align my content with user preference, I increase the probability of that of the end user engaging better with my brand. Along with this dimension, I have another dimension where the business goal needs to align with my content strategy. I should be able to have measurement matrix and criteria in place, which will identify my consumption, my trend of consumption, and eventually my business goal achievement with my content. It will also increase the campaign success rate once I optimize the content as per user preferences and as per the business goals. In a nutshell, data-backed content strategy planning is the cornerstone of enhancing platform usability. Let's understand why a non-focused content strategy may not be as effective as a focused and data-driven content strategy approach. Almost all the data that we get, the common practices of data analytics, has some time in the life cycle has come up with generalized insights like the application got 75% new users. That's a good data. That's not a useless data. However, the moment it translates to 75% of this data, the 55% of the 75% of this data is from APAC region. 35 comes from Europe and 30 comes from US. The moment these insights, granularized insights come in picture, we can do better targeting and segmentation. We can improve the content relevance and optimize user experience. For example, if I know in APAC, APAC is my major contributor, then I can customize my content as per different countries, different ethnicities, and make it more relevant for the consumers. So 75% new users on the site is helpful, but it becomes way more informative and translatable to the insights and eventually action if we know that 55% of those users were from a given region, given geography, given ethnicity. Now let's see what is a user-centered content strategy approach. The basic premise for this entire approach is that it is iterative. It is an iterative process with an emphasis on identifying the users granularly, understanding what are their behaviors and what are their journeys on an application, to understand what is the relevant content and how do I structure this content to be able to suit their specific. This naturally needs better planning, more planning. I need to identify the matrices that I want to capture to be able to understand that my strategy and approach is right in place. I need to do the relevant current and future user behavior. I need to do some forecasting here. Then I would create testifiable assumptions, execute this strategy, validate, do the testing, understand the insights, whether these insights are right in fitment with the customer and the business goals, and then I adapt with the new information. So it's an ongoing iterative process which will evolve with the business requirement as well as the customer requirement. Let's understand this with an example. User-centered content strategy approach can easily be identified with an example where there is a product detail page and the same page is consumed by two different personas, one that of a retailer and one that of an end user. Now the page renders the same information to both the personas. However, they would want a different set of data and details for their respective objective. Let's understand how. I may be a target retailer trying to go through the product detail page where I would be more interested in understanding whether I can bulk purchase the product, whether I get a bulk discount, what is the return policy for the product, what is the packaging for the product. I may be interested in these details along with some of the key ingredients that may align with my business. On the other hand, I may be an end user who would want to understand what are the constituents of the product. Are there any allergens, for example, gluten sensitivity? Are there any one unit discounts that I will be getting if I buy, or is there any used coupon, or are there any other customers support services that comes with me purchasing this product? Are there any installations that come with this product? So it's the same page, product detail page, but the information on the page is consumed differently by two different personas. Understanding these different personas and their journeys on a page gives me a better insight about how to represent relevant information hierarchy so that all of my group is engaged. However, depending on the business priority, I can identify, perhaps I want to just engage on the retailer and not the end user here. And I may generate content specific to that persona. What structural changes will help a user connect better with a web page? So this strategy gives me an insight on which persona is consuming information, how to engage that persona better in alignment with my business objectives, and how can I engage my respective personas further. Now let's understand how the matrices that I derive by putting this strategy in place help me. First and foremost, it rationalizes the discoverability. I can create content, I can create web pages in a way which will make it easy for the end user to find all the elements, all the critical elements for that page and information and features when they first encounter it. I can also place the signifiers in place. So signifiers will be any indicator. It could be a CTA, it could be filler form, it could be any marker, any path which will validate that my end user or my page consumer is traversing the path that I want the page consumer to traverse to attain a given objective. It will also increase the content relevance when I identify the personas better, when I identify their journeys better. I can make the content more relevant and more aligned to their preferences. And overall, having the matrices and the strategy in place will help me precisely define what is my overall information architecture. Let's now move to how to implement this strategy.
One of the foremost ways, the first steps, of course, is to go granular. When you talk about the audiences, it gives us good data, like Nidhi mentioned earlier. We get good data when we know our audiences. But if we go a little bit granular, we start understanding how each of these sections of these audiences interact with your system as well. That's where the personas comes in. The first step being identifying user personas for the application. Now, there are multiple ways of doing it, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are already doing it during your discoveries when you're starting a particular project, or even one-off conversations that you do. You might be defining who's going to be executing, who's going to be using your system, who's going to be interacting with your system. But there are few things that we prefer doing. Of course, research during the discovery being the foremost one. There are other ones that we also do, like connecting with the stakeholders. Usually this does not happen with a lot of engagements, because you usually connect with the product teams. But when you actually start conversing with the stakeholders, you might get insights, nuggets of information that can actually drive a better understanding of the personas, better understanding of who is interacting with the application, along with some motivations on why they are connecting with your application, what would they really like to have in your system to be engaged, to be interacting with the system altogether. There are other ways in cases where you may want to connect with the end users and do the interviews. Now, I understand with a lot of applications, lot of engagements, this is not possible because the end users could be wide ranging. However, I would still suggest that if you can make it happen, go ahead and do it. End users gives you insights that are rare. You won't get it from a perspective of a stakeholder or from a perspective of a user, from a product team itself. Having said that, if you are unable to get all this data from either the researches or the interviews, you might want to look at using analytics tool to gather some of this information. And during the course of this presentation, we will take you through some of the examples of how you can better do this. Once you have identified the personas, and again, I am taking the part where discoveries lead to personas, and then from their personas you go to the user journeys, and that's what our second step is always going to be. We'll identify what the users are going to do on your system. How are they interacting with the system? Whether they are going from one page to the another, are they using the searches? Are they landing on the home page and then going further from there? Are they landing on the specific pages using organic searches? All of them comprises of the user journeys, gives you very good insights on what is the consumption, what is the basis of your site where a lot of content is being consumed. Is it the blogs? Is it the articles? Is it specific about the page that a lot of personas are interested in. Now, again, there are a lot of ways to do it. One of them being, of course, talking to the stakeholders and getting to know their hypotheses. They usually have a very good understanding of what the consumers are going to consume on their site. That is what they use to also start creating their own content. In cases of existing site where the application already exists for some time, looking at the existing site navigation also gives you a very good idea. The information architecture always presents itself in a way where you know exactly what are the differentiators, where the users are likely to go, what are they going to hit onto, and then consume what kind of content. Of course, like I said earlier, in some of the cases where this all of this is not possible, rely on the analytics tools data that you can gather at later stages. We of course talked about identifying the personas and journeys. How do we use them? This sounded like we started with some of the design thinking perspective, and that is absolutely correct. We wanted to introduce these perspectives and these principles to ensure that when we are talking about the data, we have added a perspective to it, and we are not going blindly in. One of the first steps that you need to, of course, do is start connecting these personas with your data. How can you do it? There are again multiple ways. You can simply ask a user as to what really they are, and then you can start associating these parameters behind the scenes. On the other hand, if you already have some parameters understood, you can use those parameters to put on the site pages and then connect them with your analytics events. This starts giving you information around, again, where the consumers are going on your site, what are the oft repeated, oft consumed pages or content. You can, of course, group similar pages and set segments on analytics. That this is again in continuation of getting data and then putting it back to the analytics tool. Start looking at how they are consuming. When you start grouping them based on demographics, based on different conditions, based on where they are on the site, you start evaluating them from a perspective what further they are going to do on your site, what are they going to consume. Of course, any of these methods would work, or you can just use all of them. That works perfectly fine. You get more data, of course. Once you have done this, you want to use these tools and you want to start gathering this data. And the subsequent section talk about that. What are the different tools that you can use? Very good, simpler tools. We'll keep it. Let you decide what kind of specific softwares that you would want to use in these tools. But we would highly recommend that you start using some of these techniques to get better insights. First and the foremost, of course, is analytics. It's a very useful way of capturing data. And like I said earlier, when we have started defining events and segments based on the personas, you can start defining the flow of the users and figuring out where exactly they are landing. Where from the homepage, are they landing on the product pages? Are they landing directly onto the ingredients, like Nidhi mentioned? Would they be interested in a specific kind of content? Are they just interested in your blogs? All of that insights and all of that information you start getting when you start looking at the user flow. How does that translate to a good UX? And because we are all the time we are saying that this is what impacts your usability. This strategy is completely centered on how the users are behaving. If we get insights on what how the data is being consumed, we can start translating it into small incremental delights and reaching a good UX, of course. One of the examples that you can see on the screen, a very significant example that we realized, very small change that we made, where we highlighted one of the CTAs on tribute and memorial for one of the personas called parents and caregivers, which was for an application that deals with a specific disease. What we realized here was that due to an emotional connect towards patients suffering from a similar disease, in some cases even died because of that disease, there was an emotional connect, and the users were more forthcoming in donating in that specific area as a tribute, as a memorial. What we also realized was that once they were using this, and the application and the website also started matching the same gift, they had enough motivation to start donating even further. How do you gather more data? There are other ways to do it. Of course, in this scenario, we also used a heat map to start looking at how the consumption per page is happening. While we have been talking till now about how the journeys have been, how the overall consumption have been, we go a little further and start looking at how the pages are being consumed, whether there is enough relevant data on the site, whether you are whether it is visible or not, whether there are enough CTAs on the site, whether you know that where to go after you have consumed that content. All of them can be tracked if I start understanding how the page consumption is happening, how the content on the page is really being consumed by the users. Um, Yet again, we'd like to give you an example as to why this is important and how this translates to better UX. In one of our previous examples of a similar case scenario where there was a specific patient persona who was interacting with a particular content which specifically talked about lot of around lot of resources for a particular disease. We realized that about 78% of the users from that persona actually dropped off when a significant chunk of resources was available right at the end. This is relevant content, highly relevant, but incorrectly placed because the personas were not reaching that page, that part of the page, and probably that content is really left out. What are the other ways? The third way that we thought would be very useful while we have looked at a group so far, further granularizing the content, granularizing the users. If we start doing some anonymized recordings of the users on a specific page, and this is really applicable or truly useful when we are talking about a forms, any kind of a form, a newsletter form or a donation form that might exist. If you start recording recording how the users are behaving on your forms, you get a lot more insights. You start understanding that where are they getting stuck, are there any specific fields that are not really helping them, are there any fields that they'd like to skip, are there any specific fields where they are actually spending too much of time. In the example here shown, you can see that the user seems very frustrated. He's not able to fill in the form correctly, and then he looks like he is moving all around. And continuing that example, actually, when we again translated it back to better UX, we realized that in one of these cases where we were looking at a donation form, 45% of all the users who were regular donors, means they were donating on a month-to-month basis, were actually spending an addition of 3 to 15 minutes just on the payment section. And the reason being that they were really getting up, fetching the card details, coming back, filling it in, and then spending their time. This was specifically true for some of the elderly visitors, where they, of course, didn't remember the card details as often as other younger folks. So they had to walk back. In some of the cases, out of frustration, they would even close the complete session. What did we do with this information, and how did we actually convert it into better UX? We implemented a very simple and secure check that introduced a remember me functionality, which allowed the elderly visitors, and in fact, in our case, because we implemented it for everyone, to remember their payment details, so that they don't have to come back and then fill it again. Like I said, it is secure because we had to add a SSL certificate to it to ensure that this data is not hacked through. But really, this worked wonders and really drove the whole point that we can be maximizing on the returns, even with smaller efforts that we have put in. Now let's look at the reporting as well.
So looking at the report and how we consolidate, now we know we have a lot of data. We have contextualized the data with the personas, we have identified their journeys, we have optimized the content strategy first, and then we are in the process of optimizing the content. We have consolidated the analytics data. Now we have a lot of data on our plate. We would first want to consolidate it into something meaningful. Consolidation happens in the step one when we do discovery. We have one-on-one with a lot of stakeholders like directly brands. We can talk to different business functions as well to understand what the pain areas are, how the data, how they would want the goals to be translated. So we have huge amount of insight from a business goal perspective to a requirement perspective to their understanding as to how a user is interacting, and with a vision of how the user should be interacting with their application. It always works in our case when we have a single point view of this entire discovery activity, and we have the insights in place, something like a product canvas that we very commonly use in our system, where we define everything from the purpose of the product to who's the audience, to what is the product, to what does the audience require. Finally, drilling down to what is the business goal and what are the key matrices to understand, to be able to track those business goals. Now, along with this exercise, we also need to understand what are the priorities of those business goals. For example, an increased conversion rate or an improved CTA, click-through rate, would be something that at this moment I'm interested in. So that prioritization of business goals and the business goals along with the measurement matrices is something that we would want to do. Along with that, we would want to collate and analyze the existing data. This data could be internal data, which we have got during discovery. It could also be the competitor data, domain data. We need to put all of this data together, establish the business goals and deliverable. What is it that the business wants right now? Prioritize it, identify the deliverables, draw insights from the domain landscape also. What is happening in that industry? What is the typical consumer behavior who is consuming the information from that industry? So this becomes the first part of my report. Once I've identified what data has come in, I also need to have a sense check, give a sense check to this data, identify what are the industry domains and best practices, identify what are the trends. So I may have 10 trends. What are the best practices in those 10 trends? What are the useful trends? What is something that I can maybe do without? What is it that my competition is doing? What is working well with them, for them? What may not be working that well? So I need to have a complete understanding of the industry, of the domain, as well as the competitors. And based on that, I should have my recommendations in place. So my recommendations will not just be best suited to the business goals. It has to be in complete alignment with what my business needs right now, with what my business needs 3 years from now, to what my business would need when it evolves in 5 years' time. In the same vein, it has to be optimized to the customer preferences. If today's customer needs X value, it may need an X plus some value in next 3 years and 5 years. So I have to have the capability, my recommendations have to incorporate the evolving nature of the business and the evolving nature of the consumer as well. And for that, I need to be recommending a forward-looking scalable solution, which is in alliance with the technology growth, technology trends, which is in alliance with domain growth, industry trends, and the consumer trends and behaviors. It has to be a scalable solution, which can be evolved without a lot of input for the years to come. Having completed the final recommendation in a report, it will be good if we look at critical do's and don'ts, which we have identified, which works for us. There may be a lot of do's and don'ts which will add to this and which could be user specific, which you all must have identified for your respective system. However, these are few that we would want to bring your attention to. So while we are identifying the personas, we have to make sure there is no overlapping persona, so that way our data makes more gives us more meaning, makes more sense to us. For example, in the example that Shashank had mentioned, identifying a customer and bifurcating it into a caregiver and a doctor will help identify the journey, because a caregiver may be consuming that data, and the intent of a donation could be an emotion driven. For example, if a caregiver is reading about colitis, he may want to understand what the disease is like, what the symptoms are like. On the other hand, a doctor already knows about these the etiology, or doctor already understands what a disease is and may want to consume that the data on that page with respect to the solutions. So identifying the customer or the information consumer as somebody who's a caregiver persona and the doctor persona makes more sense to the business to be able to have the content strategy in place which is aligned with and can lead to better customer engagement. It is also important to understand that the journeys that any analytics tool is capturing is totally, is based on hypothesis. It totally depends on the expertise of the person who's created maybe an event, who's created the segmentation, depends on the understanding and interaction, user interaction based on the expertise of a person or our set of expertise. So we can, for example, in this on this slide, you can see that the highlighted journey is the proposed user journey for customers, which in-store sellers also used. So there was an application which was available for online journey as well as the in-store sellers, and we figured that both of these journeys on the same application turned out to be completely different. Therefore, it is important to be able to maybe segment or create events which would align with a specific persona's journey on your application. Similarly, it is very, very important that our suggestions for an application or a feature are phased and are tested for the impact that they provide before we move on to a new set. It is critical to identify what goes in first phase, what goes in later phase, and relevant testing for that suggestion, because that will give us the extent of impact, what worked, what did not work, and eventually if something worked, then we'll be able to replicate that to the further steps. So it may appear counterintuitive to really invest such time in creating phases and testing. However, in the end, it gives us better customer engagement and better customer experience if it is phased, tested, and then implemented. Coming to some more do's and don'ts, I'm sure it varies from business to business. It also varies from consumer to consumer. However, in our practice, we've seen that when we compare heat maps for different personas, it has always yielded better results if we use parameters to compare these heat maps. And these parameters are kept consistent across the applications. So if I've used some parameters on some of the page groupings for my users, using the same parameters in my analytics tools gives me more precise results. Whenever one is in doubt about the variant of a page, variant of an application, variant of a feature for that matter, do use A/B testing methods to ascertain which variant works better. Do not use small size data for the heat maps, otherwise extrapolation will really lose its meaning. For example, if we decide in the above examples, some of the examples that Shashank had taken up, if we want to decide whether or not to use a quarterly payment donation payment tab, if we want to keep it or we want to remove it, we cannot use the data over 2 months to understand the user behavior for donation in a quarter or for a quarterly donation. For this, we need to have a longer duration data to be able to derive meaning whether or not this feature should be retained or not. Also, too many personas and too many journeys, each persona becomes an overkill and it will really stop making sense. So identifying the personas and the most relevant journeys more often than not make more sense. To be able to sum it up and add more suggestion to and give more dimension to all the discussion that we've had so far, these suggestions, of course, are what we would suggest. They can be useful for a lot of cases. They have been useful for a lot of cases for us. However, for each system, for each business, one has to exercise discretion and evaluate what is your specific use case before you arrive at them. So one of the major suggestions that, one of the major practices that really comes handy to us is that if an organization or a setup has a large mobile user base, then it is usually a good indicator that a mobile app may be more useful. It is more, the probability of people using it and engaging the user, it goes really high. And to be able to engage with a larger audience and not just get linguistically limited to a certain geography, making your site multilingual could really be a key step. Taking an example, if we just take US market as an example, um, US has a lot of people, a lot of users who may have not so good a grip on English, but they may be proficient in their own languages for applications which are maybe learning based, applications which may be training based. Helping those users read their content in their own language gives a better understanding, better chances of engagement, and it also increases the engagement, the user experience. And as the application owner, one does get a wider audience base, which may not be geographically limited to US only, but other places as well. Similarly, it is very, very important now that time is a commodity. It is very important to have a precise, customized, user-centric form whenever you want to engage your customer. For example, instead of just a generic subscribe to our newsletter, one can have variations like subscribe to a news feed if news is what they're interested in and want to understand the new things that are happening. Subscribe to more researches if research and the resources is something that a user is interested in. Subscribe to latest courses can be another CTA that totally depends on the user and the content that you have on the site. So using slight variations make it a little more personalized to a user and the content on that page. Similarly, having A/B testing and validation for the designs that have been created without a user experience research is something that really gives that advantage to the content creator. CTAs can and are known to have an improved performance of upwards of 100% if they are placed correctly on the page and in the right context. For example, if we have a long scroll page, it is identified during testing, it was identified that if you have a sticky sidebar menu, it will yield better result as compared to just a big side menu for the long scrolls. So testings and validation, especially for intuitiveness of interface, is something that really works. Similarly, if all the call to actions on different pages land on a single page, it makes more sense to have similar call to actions for similar purposes or to be familiar. For example, if all the pages are going to a donation page, then instead of calling donate now, submit, and go here using a single call to action, donate now would make more sense than having different terminology for different call to action, calls to action. So this was what we both had for all of you, and both of us are reachable at our business ID, business@srijan.net, web@srijan.net, and on Twitter @srijan.
Thank you, everyone. I hope this was very useful. And like Nidhi mentioned, you can reach us here, or you can connect us with on the Drupal.org IDs. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.